Moshi moshi.
Hey guys, welcome to part 7 of Let's Play Spider-Man Web of Shadows Amazing Allies Edition on the PS2. In the last part we took on... who was it? The Tinkerer. That's the fella. You fight so many villains in these games and I just can't kind of keep track. Like every part before the villain and whatever. Anyway, so after defeating the Tinkerer and stopping a missile, Kingpin's like, go investigate S.H.I.E.L.D. and Spider-Man's like, okay. So now here we are on a heli-carrier, one of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s famous heli-carriers. No real explanation to how Spider-Man got here, you just kind of have to go with it. This is one of those games where it's just like, here's a level, here's a level, here's a level. Although this game is trying to tell like a cohesive story through text boxes, but it is still a cohesive story, so it's a little odd. So, okay, too many things are happening at once. First of all, Nick Fury isn't here, so whatever, who really cares? Second thing, there's a guy from Tron. I don't... Like, that's meant to be like a shield shoulder. That's really hard. Shield soldier. There we go. Beautiful. Yeah, that's meant to be a guy who's a part of S.H.I.E.L.D., but for some reason they went for like a Tron look. I don't know if that's meant to be in line with comic books, but I can't imagine there's any comic books where they just make him look like Tron. I think they just made him all blue and Tron-like to match the aesthetics of the ship, but I don't quite know what they were thinking. So the next thing that we've already kind of gone over is that at the beginning there, I kind of skipped it quite quickly, but there was a box that came up saying, hey, you're fighting the symbiotes. There's like some telepathy, I don't know how you meant to say it. There's something kind of going on where they're connected to barriers, so they introduce this. It's a brand new concept, guys, okay? It's a whole brand new concept where you have to defeat all the enemies in the area before you can get past. Brand new concept. We've been doing that the whole game, and now they decide to actually add some logic to it for this level. As in, oh yeah, the symbiotes are connected to this structure, so of course you gotta take down the symbiotes. I mean, that just makes sense. And then there's still parts in this level where you can't progress without taking out all the symbiotes, which, again, like half the time there's logic, half the time there's not. But it's more like 80% of the time there's not, 20% of the time there is. So let's get to the embarrassing part. Don't you hate it when you play a level and it goes fine, then you start recording and you get killed by Steam? Isn't that just the worst? We've all been there, let's not kid around. Oh, you got to... it's something I haven't actually moaned about that much, but there's parts in this game, and if, as you saw there, I managed to jump after dying, so that's weird. But there's just parts of this game where you have to just avoid stuff. I understand it, it's a very typical video game thing, where it's like, here's something that will hurt you, wait for a bit, and then move on.
Over here, Spider-Man!
Well, if it isn't Jessica Drew, the big shot S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. I gotta say, I liked your other outfit way better.
Yeah, so there's quite a lot of that, and there's a bit coming up where we have to avoid more stuff. And in this game, it's just kind of annoying. It's kind of hard to describe. It's not that Spider-Man controls too poorly, it's just kind of annoying having to avoid stuff. Because I just want to go, I just want to get through the levels, and the game's like, no, you got to wait for a bit. Oh no, you got to wait again. Oh no, wait one more time, please. And we're going to see that quite a bit later on. But before then, we got to see Jessica Drew, who is Spider-Woman. I looked that up, so you're welcome.
Welcome to the S.H.I.E.L.D. heli-carrier.
And that's like all she's got to say, I suppose. I don't know in what universe this is meant to take place. I don't know how comic book universes work. But yeah, in this one, apparently here's Jessica Drew. She was Spider-Woman at some point, and now she's joined S.H.I.E.L.D. and is going for the whole Tron look. I don't know. She's mostly here just for like, hey, here's another character. Because as we all know, when it comes to Spider-Man games,
Different. Did you get a haircut?
they're all up. Sorry, I walked over that. I stamped all over that brilliant joke. Sorry, let me repeat what that joke was. Spider-Man saw something that looked like Venom and said, "Hey Eddie, did you get a haircut? So I apologise for taking all the humour out of that wonderful line. Oh boy. So, like the last level, this level is kind of dull. It's just dull. All you're doing is just fighting the symbiotes, and it's just the same as before. You're fighting a load of enemies to open up the next area, although sometimes here there's a big alien structure in the way, and sometimes there's not. It's just kind of a bit arbitrary and all up in the air. And it's just dull. And that brings me on to another reason why the fighting is bad. Over these last few parts, I've gone over quite a few reasons. There's no good dodge, you don't actually have any decent attacks, it's quite dull. But another reason why it's dull is because you don't really get any range of enemies. So in this level there are technically, I think, 3 different types of enemies, and we've seen 2 of them already. One of them is just the normal symbiote, and then one of them is the venom looking symbiote. The difference between them, the Venom one has more health, and that's it. Like, I wish I could break down the different strategies to defeating all the enemies, but I can't, because it's just square triangle, just hit square and triangle a lot, just like point in the right direction, just hammer a lot of square, give it a bit of triangle, then a bit more square, throw in some triangle and squares, and that's kind of about it. And then in this level it's quite fun because there's even more enemies than ever to fight. Of course, we're going through a video game after all, there's going to be more enemies, but with this game, ooh, I would probably recommend using as many of your power-ups as possible just to kind of get through them. But there's 2 things that I need to kind of mention, because this whole LP is, hey, let's have a look at this game, and my ultimate feelings about it is that it's not very good. Now, there is a couple things that I did not know, or was just not aware of before, or in the previous parts. The first one is that the power-ups and how they work. Not a major one, but basically those little green spider icons and the golden ones, when you pause the game it says power-ups and tells you how many you have. What that means is that after you beat the level, that's how many power-ups you get. So by collecting those little icons in levels, you then get more power-ups and you have more of a chance of getting a good one. Because I believe it's random. You collect a power-up and then the game just assigns you a random one. That may be wrong, again, I don't want to make another mistake with my knowledge of the game, but yeah, that's how that works. So there is kind of a reason to explore and a reason to pick them up, but you get more than enough power-ups naturally anyway, and seeming how you can only have 5 per level, not really worth it in the end. The second thing is that there's abilities that you can buy and skills that I haven't up to this point. This is confession time right here. It was one of those things where if you select skill manager I think it is, it lists 6 different skills. So I was kind of like, oh, all those skills that they list are just abilities, like a different sort of kick, that sort of thing. I was like, oh, that's kind of lame that there's not more attacks than that I can buy. And if you just scroll down, there's a load of kind of stuff. There's not more attacks, but there is more stuff you can buy. So what I could have done before this point, and what I should have been doing, and was a mess up in my, it's my bad, is that I could have been buying health upgrades. You can see that the health meter, now that I look at it, has tons of room where it can get bigger, and you can buy more powerful attacks, but they're for each specific suit. So you can either buy more powerful attacks for the red suit or for the black suit. Although I believe it just makes your attacks more powerful rather than giving you any new specific kind of attacks. So it doesn't actually change the gameplay that much, but it would have been a bit handy, because this level is dull. Because just like the last one as well, it's kind of confusing. The camera, like a lot of this game, is just too far zoomed in. It's not clear where you have to go. Sometimes you have to defeat all the enemies to open a door. Sometimes you have to zip upwards. Sometimes you have to go through a vent. It's really inconsistent. And with how zoomed in it is, it can be unclear about which way you have to go. So there is a lot of trial and error with this level. And here's the part I was mentioning. Oh, and that's a green thing right there. That's a power-up we just picked up. So there we go. But this is what I was referring to. You just gotta wait for the lasers, and you just gotta wait for the lasers. It's really dull. And then you can just do that sometimes where you just get stuck being hurt and it's just a little... Oh, this level's not a good level. So, here's something I don't think I've mentioned yet. So, I complain about the camera quite a lot. But there is a reason why it zoomed in like this. It wasn't just incompetence. I mean, partially. It was partially incompetence. But the reason why it zoomed in like this is because this is a PSP game that was ported to the PS2. Now, they were released at the same time. But back in 2008, I believe Web of Shadows came out. Yeah, it was 2008 because Treyarch made Quantum of Solace and Call of Duty World at War in the same year and released them, although they didn't make this game, Amaze Entertainment did. But yeah, so back then Activision was going all in with releasing games on every single console because there was a lot of consoles. PS2 was still popular, and then handhelds were still very relevant, and a lot of companies still made handhelds equivalent, so they kind of went all in. They made a PS3 and 360 version. Fair enough, they got Treyarch, the main guys, to do that. And then, of course, the DS was still, was very popular at the time. The DS is the second best-selling console of all time. You got the PS2, then the DS. So, of course, the DS was really popular. So they hired a company to do that. But then, of course, there was also the PSP. They couldn't ignore the PSP. So they then released a PSP version. But then, at the time, a lot of companies were porting over games from the PSP to the PS2, and a lot of people kind of just accepted it. They sold decently well, and it was an easy way of making a PS2 version, so they just got the PSP version and slapped it on the PS2. So this is essentially a PSP port, even though they came out at the same time. And it's something I haven't actually really talked about, and I've got plenty of time because this level's dull. But a lot of people don't like this game because on the same console, Spider-Man 2 came out, which was great, and Ultimate Spider-Man also came out, which was also great. It just kind of lives a little bit in Spider-Man 2's shadow. But that's a great game as well, Ultimate Spider-Man, and if you haven't played that, definitely check that out. And those were 3D open world games and made open world games popular and more relevant. Or outside of GTA anyway. They did it differently from GTA and made it work. So when this was the game that people got, because the PS2 was still very popular at the time, it was 2008, a lot of people still had theirs, it was the best selling console of all time, whatever. I guess people were just really disappointed. And I can absolutely understand why when you kind of compare it. Like when you take this game and compare it to other PSP Spider-Man games, it's fine. Like it's completely fine. It's okay. And if you look at the reviews, you can have a look at those reviews, and the PSP version, despite being exactly the same as the PS2 version, well, not exactly the same, but I'll get into that another part. Despite being essentially exactly the same, the PSP version got much better reviews. It didn't get amazing reviews, but the PS2 version reviewed worse than the PSP version because it was the same game, but of course it just didn't hold up on a console. So I guess my advice is get it on a PSP. And they didn't have anything to say there. I stopped so they could have a chat. Oh, there we go. Alright, thanks for that input, Jessica. Okay, so let's get back to the actual mission itself. So what we were doing that whole time is collecting part of a code. Completely pointless, because you got to go and talk to 3 different things, and then you can unlock this door. But you would think, right, you would think that that means that you had that hub room where Spider-Woman was, and you would then go to different parts of the ship, get the thing, come back to the middle, go to another path, get the code, come back. No, it's still pretty linear. Like, there's still one set path you have to go. It's just as you go down the set path, a guy will be like, hey, here's part of the code. Looking good, Spider-Man. I'll catch you later, mate. Like, that's what it is. That's all that kind of happens. So there's really no point in doing that. And then you return to that room, and the door behind it doesn't even open. It's a completely different door. So it feels like they kind of wanted it to be non-linear, but then they just didn't do it like that, I suppose. So here's another new enemy. Flying bat freaks. I don't know. There's not that much to really say about them. They fly down to your level so you can punch them. And their attacks are whatever. See, this is what I mentioned before. The enemies aren't actually different. They're there, but you don't have to fight them in any sort of different way. You're still just punching square and triangle. Which some people would say the way you fight the enemies and the fact that you don't have to fight them differently is just a product of the combat not having much variety into it and having a limited number of moves, which I think is true. But at the same time, I think you can have a combat that has a limited number of moves, but you can still use those moves in different ways to fight enemies. Like, it's one way of making combat interesting, which is something that this game doesn't do. Like, it has very simple moves, but also the enemies you fight are very simple. Like, there's just nothing kind of to it. And then it's not fun in the Streets of Rage way because enemies take too long to kill. Although saying that, as I mentioned, there are upgrades that the footage you're seeing and I'm watching at the moment, I did not have said upgrades. So the next part we'll really see if the combat's still dull. I'm gonna guess yes. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say yes. I still think it's probably gonna be a bit dull, and it still doesn't excuse the other problems. Just like graphically, it's okay, but the moves will, even if I can defeat enemies quicker, there's still not much to the combat, which in Spider-Man is disappointing. Just disappointing outright. There's too much text. Graphically, it could do a bit more. It can just be confusing, the camera's zoomed in too much, there's still problems. And this is what I'm talking about. The game gave you a text box saying, or what I was talking about earlier, I should say. It gave you a text box saying, oh, you gotta defeat all the enemies to get past this big alien thing, and there's a logical reason, folks. This one is just, you need to get through that teleporter, but you just gotta defeat these enemies. And that's what makes this level quite annoying. Sometimes, like most of the time, you have to defeat all the enemies, but you won't know until you've webbed yourself through really quickly. Because there's so many enemies that I found myself naturally wanting to just quickly get through it. Just web through it, skip as many enemies as possible. But sometimes you just can't. Sometimes you just have to do it.
You're getting the control room back? Now get out, you don't have clearance.
Okay, thanks, guy. Thanks for that, Spider-Man. Now for this bit, you want to just web through as quickly as possible. Like I said, there's so many chances, or there's so many enemies that you have to fight, that you want to make sure you skip as much as you can. And for this section, I don't know why it's here, honestly, they could have easily cut this out. Just get through as quickly as possible, don't waste your time. There's no door blocking you. Just go through quickly. You've wasted enough time, my friend, up to this point. Just get to that loading screen. Get it done. Another loading screen as well. This is the second one of the level. It's not that complex. I'm going to say it.
Oh no! It's my arch enemy, the Green Goblin! Sorry, it's just that all you big green scary guys look alike after a while.
Oh, yes. Please entertain us with some of your legendarily witty banter, Spider.
So here's the Jackal. No, I don't know anything about the Jackal either. I'm glad you said it before I did. He's just like, I was working with S.H.I.E.L.D. because the whole point is that this ship got infected because they were working on Venom, trying to weaponize it in some way. So S.H.I.E.L.D. was doing evil stuff, and he was helping him. But he was the double agent for Spencer Smythe. It doesn't matter. This boss fight is the easiest boss fight in the game, or arguably the easiest one. It's definitely the easiest one we've seen up to this point. He's just a normal enemy with a health bar. He doesn't really have any special attacks, or you can just keep punching him. Like, you can just keep punching him and there's nothing he can do. They even throw smaller enemies at you, but they don't do anything. The only reason I used a summon there is because I want to show off all the summons in the game, and I only have so many parts to do it. You can just, look, you can just punch him. He's just a normal enemy, barely a boss fight. I can't imagine anyone would have trouble with him.
Are you making fun of me?
And there we go. I was like, wow, you're so cool and impressive. Great job. And what he does is give you a serum to increase your powers. So if you've been mostly doing red powers, then you can do that. I'm not too sure actually. I think right there it gave me a choice to say I want the red one or want the black one. I have a feeling that I think you can make that choice. Later on you can't make a choice and it just makes whatever. I'll get to it when I get to it. Anyway, for no reason, Jessica Drew is now on a... She tells you to get off, which is fair enough. The heli-carrier is infected. And look at this drama. Oh, she's going down. Oh. Oh no. The drama. But anyway, that was that. So, next time in Let's Play Spider-Man Web of Shadows Amazing Allies Edition, we have found out a bit more about S.H.I.E.L.D., although I've skimmed over it because there's not that much to it. Either way, they're involved, and that's not great. So, I've been Armstrong23. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you next time for more fun, I suppose.